and needs results to really go in his favour to actually snatch the title away from Bradley.
Yes, absolutely. Vidas looked like he was struggling for pace this morning. Certainly he was struggling to match Cencetti, who on numerous occasions he needed to get past really and try and close up to, at least certainly close up to Smith to try and keep that deficit at a minimum.
So they share the front row of the grid. Then it's James Littlejohn and Terence Woodward on row 2. Christian Kronegard and Manhal Alos on the third row from Alex Kapadia and Jaap Bartels. They're Jeremy Ferguson and Alex Mortimer. John Harrison, Alain Costa, but we think Harrison starting from the pit lane. Then Henk Toys and James Abbott. Jean Gandar and one of the stars of the earlier race who finished third, Marco Cencetti, who completes the field. But we've seen already today, with Alex Kapadia from the very back of the grid to second place, that a lowly grid slot does not necessarily deter an excellent finish. Now, is there some work going on there with Bradley Smith, or is that just because they haven't had the 1 minute board just yet? Certainly hunched in the cockpit.
Yeah, looks like it could be a last minute pep talk there. Of course, Bradley Smith looking to do the treble this weekend and effectively make it 3 championships on the bounce: Clubman's Cup, SR3 Challenge, and then Radical Masters.
I'm going to have to consult my book of anoraks to think of a driver that has won 3 different championships in successive years.
No, I mean it's certainly not to my knowledge ever been attempted by any Radical competitor before.
So the sign goes up for the drivers to fire up the engines. The umbrellas are cleared away because I should introduce myself, Ben Evans. I'm here in Barcelona alongside Will Brown from Radical Sports Cars. We're in a commentary box which overlooks the pits complex. It's been an absolutely beautiful day here. You wouldn't believe it's the 2nd of November. It's temperatures that in the UK in June would be called a heat wave. But it's a moderately mild, just 22, 23 degrees ambient air temperature. The sun has peeked through. Perfect conditions for motor racing. So it's a 50-minute mandatory pit stop race ahead for us, and it is really the narrative of the weekend has been Bradley Smith and Tristan Vidas. Once more, they lock out the front row of the field as they set off momentarily on their final formation lap of the season. And they certainly know, Will, after all the testing earlier in the week and then 4 races this weekend, this circuit pretty well by now.
Yeah, absolutely. They've had plenty of, as you say, testing opportunities since Thursday, and what they've tended to find through the weekend is that towards the end of the day, the circuit gets quite slippery as the surface has been baked all day. So yeah, tyre management will be quite critical, and as always at Catalonia, setup is so important. If you can get the car set up really well to hang through this opening complex, and then on the long drive into turn 3 uphill, then that makes your lap a really good one, and puts you in great stead for a good lap time. But yeah, just to reiterate, then there's 13 points separating Smith and Vidas at the top of the table, and then there's a real battle royale for 3rd place in the championship as well, which is between Tom Jordan and Alex Kapadia, the Slim Racing duo, and Chris Hyman. So at the moment they're just 5 points apart, so it's all to play for.
But it's going to be a pretty tricky start to the race for Alex Mortimer. He's down in 10th position on the grid. Alex Kapadia a bit further up the order. And what we've seen this weekend is that for whatever reason, Alex Mortimer and Chris Hyman seems to have been chasing the setup on their car, whereas the Slim Racing car, Alex Kapadia and Tom Jordan, has been working absolutely perfectly. There is Jesus Fuster, who showed brightly earlier on, and he's got a very quick co-pilot in Constantine Calco, who will take over from him for the second half of the race.
Yeah, Calco again, of course, a former Radical European Masters champion. So, no, wealth of experience on the field. It's going to be very tight. And, of course, they're not going to be grappling with the slower SR3 traffic and possibly back markers so early in the race. This could really keep the field very tightly together until the latter stages.
And it is going to be significantly different track conditions for the drivers from the race they had earlier on, because since then we have had touring car race from the South Leon Euro Cup. We've had a Formula 3 race for the Euro Formula Open, and we've also just moments ago had a race for the International GT Open cars, which have left a lot of marbles around the circuit. And therefore I suspect part of the trick for this race is going to be for the teams that have actually adjusted their setup and tyre pressures appropriately to the air temperature and potential changes in the track surface.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, just coming around into the final chicane there now. Grid's bunching up tightly, as I said, with everybody effectively in identical 2.7 litre, 430 horsepower SR8 race cars. This is going to be a very, very tight first corner, I think.
Certainly will be, as the pace car pulls on ahead. So it's the responsibility of Bradley Smith then to pace the field through the chicane, and then he will measure the pace out of the final turn. It's a rolling start, of course, as ever in the Radical European Masters, as we get ready to go racing for the final time in 2014. Who will be the champion? We will find out in 50 minutes or so time, as the field accelerating towards the starting gantry. When the red lights flash out, we'll be on our way. And here we go then, and another good start from Bradley Smith. But James Littlejohn also well away, as is Ross Kaiser, tucked into fourth position. They're all squeezing to the inside of the road. So it's Smith from Vidas, then Littlejohn and Kaiser, with Christian Kronegard just having a little bit of a lock-up. Manhal Alos also being swamped from those behind. It's Alex Mortimer who has to take evasive action, and Alos, and he tips into Jeremy Ferguson, who goes into the gravel trap and has not yet re-emerged. I think he will do, as the pack surge through turn 3 and on towards the hairpin at turn 4. And already Bradley Smith trying to make good his escape.
Yeah, Mortimer took a very brave line around the outside there and really had to position the car wide out on the curbs. And as he hopped back in, obviously didn't leave Kronegard much space, but no, he's managed to hold it together and has made good inroads up the field.
Meanwhile, that's Capaldi having a demon first lap, already clear of Christian Kronegard, who's looking to the inside of Ross Kaiser, as Marco Cenchetti and James Abbott do battle a little bit further down the order. Sliding through turns 7 and 8 and uphill is the race leader, Bradley Smith. He's trying to break through of Vidas, as now the challenge for fourth place, and through goes Alex Capaldi ahead of Ross Kaiser. His next target is James Littlejohn, and I think the good news here for Smith and Vidas is that we've got a lot of the quicker pro drivers starting this race, and therefore if they can pull clear of them, they won't have to worry so much later on.
Yeah, the pack immediately behind first and second is very, very closely bunched, and they'll be squabbling over that final podium position in the race today. And ultimately, as you say, once they start squabbling and tripping over each other and holding each other up and defending, their lap time's going to drop off, which will allow Bradley and Vidas ultimately to peel away into the distance.
But of course, Bradley Smith, he has got an additional 25 seconds in the pits. That's right. It is indeed, from my rudimentary maths. It's an extra 15 seconds for Tristan Vidas, and the same for Capadia and Tom Jordan. Extra 10 seconds for Marco Cenchetti, as a move from Alex Mortimer to the inside of Christian Kronegard. So that's the place gained for Mortimer, up into 6th position. And of course, he and Chris Hyman unlikely to have, well, they don't have any of the success seconds attributed to them, so if they can stay in touch with Alex Capaldi, then that gives Chris Hyman every opportunity to jump ahead of Tom Jordan later on. Somebody has a big lock-up going into turn 4, and in fact has done more than had a lock-up, I think. Or is that just the smoke drifting across the gravel trap? It could be. Don't see anybody stranded there. There's one driver who's, in fact, we do have a car. It's Christian Kronegard who's gone straight on, and that's not the first time this race he's been caught out. He also had a little bit of a snatch of the brakes into the first corner of the race, as the leading group of cars all the way back to Alex Mortimer now begin to break clear of the rest of the field. Yeah,
Kronegard's admitted earlier on he's been struggling with setup all weekend, and yet again, obviously it's not quite to his liking here.
So James Littlejohn and Alex Capaldi are ganging up behind Tristan Vidas. Then we've got Ross Kaiser and Alex Mortimer in the next train of cars, headed by Jaap Bartels from Hazers Fuster, Henk Toys, James Abbott, Ozzy Yusuf and Manhal Alos, who speculates to the inside. He gains the place on Ozzy Yusuf. He's also, I think, rather hoping to sneak to the inside of James Abbott. That didn't quite work out.
Yeah, this is a very closely bunched train there with Alan Costa heading out the back. But yeah, it's always spectacular when Manhal's in the mix.
So there is Jaap Bartels in 7th position. Hazers Fuster just tucked in behind him, as Ozzy Yusuf just pushed out a little bit wide. He's got Jeremy Ferguson. He's recovered nicely behind him. Then the Monegasque Alain Costa, as we focus on the fight for second place from Vidas to Littlejohn and Capadia, then Kaiser and Mortimer, and then the big gap, 6 seconds or so to Bartels.
Yeah, look at that already. Smith managed to pull out 2.2 seconds in the opening 2 laps. So he's obviously made good his escape and set the fastest lap of the race so far.
Well, don't forget, he's going to spend an additional 10 seconds in the pits in comparison to Tristan Vidas. and therefore if he can build a 10-second buffer before the pit stops, that would do him very nicely.
Yeah, we're just seeing the battle here between Henk Toos and James Abbott as well for 9th and 10th position.
So James Abbott closing up underneath the rear spoiler of Henk Toos, as they've got Alos just up behind them. I think Alos was probably one of the drivers who lost out a little bit in the early sort out. Henk Toos, one of the drivers who gained. It's great to see him up inside the top 10. And James Abbott, no Chris Hoy today, so he's having to do both of these 50-minute races single-handedly.
Yeah, and Henk, of course, owner of Radical Benelux, an extremely experienced Radical competitor in the SR8, both in Radical Masters and the Dutch Superlight Series as well. And he's really been crucial, really, to the success in the way that these cars handle. In that he's also the owner of Intrac Suspension, on which all these cars race and run. So yeah, he should know exactly how that car feels underneath it.
Meanwhile, Jeremy Ferguson looked to the inside of Aussie Yusuf, and he makes the move stick because Yusuf outbrakes himself. Alain Costa also tempted to try and sneak through. Yusuf recovers to the loss of 2 places, and now it's Costa applying the pressure to Jeremy Ferguson, as still Jaap Bartels being harried by Jesus Fuster. I think Fuster, if he's got the pace, would quite like to move ahead of Bartels, because with some clear air he should fly. The same goes for Marco Ciancetti, who really came good in the second half of the race earlier on.
There's been an interesting change of pace actually at the front end, because Bradley's actually lost best part of half a second there in the last lap, with Tristan managing to close the gap to just 1.7 seconds.
Now, whether or not that was, I suspect that was a case of Bradley making a mistake somewhere, as James Abbott to the inside of Henk Toos, and so Abbott snatches the place. That is 9th position in favour of Abbott. Henk, though, looking to the outside at turn 3, and it's got the car turning absolutely on a dime. No concerns for him with his setup, as they're all trying to close back into Jaap Bartels, who's rather acting as the cork in the bottle here, because you'd suggest that most of the drivers behind are a little bit quicker. Well, just by the look on her face, I think he is going to the shops a little bit later on by way of some compensation, as Manhal Alos looks to the inside of Abbott. Again, can't quite squeeze past. Meanwhile, Marco Ciancetti chasing Manhal Alos. And Ciancetti, we know if he can get through this group, will fly. There is Tom George, by the way, Alex Capaldia's co-driver, who'll take on the car for the second half of the race.
Yeah, really, and as we saw in the race this morning, it was Ciancetti that was much of the cause of woe for Vidas, of course. As try as he might, Vidas just couldn't seem to match the pace of Ciancetti on the podium position, and yeah, he struggled to make his way past and ended up out of the podium points. Then that just allowed Smith to romp away into the distance.
Ciancetti, for the time being, though, cannot find a way clear of Alos, but they're all really up behind Jaap Bartels. That's the challenge for them, because Bartels is just a little bit slower than those around him, but all of that group are 3 seconds a lap slower than the cars in front of them. So whilst they're all having a thoroughly entertaining scrap, essentially this is taking them out of contention once the pit stops are worked through, really to do anything better than 7th place, because they are already 20 seconds back from the race leader Bradley Smith, who responded with a much better lap, as James Abbott now looks to make his move to the inside of Jesus Fuster. Abbott leaves the braking as late as he dares. Fuster's going to dispute this, though, through turn 2. All credit to James Abbott, gives racing room, realises he wasn't quite far ahead enough, and therefore the place goes back in favour of Fuster. But as they battle, and we've seen this time and time again this weekend, as they battle, suddenly Jaap Bartels gets some daylight.
Yeah, that's right, and it's very tempting to try and make a move up the inside of there, but the second part of the chicane is deceptively tight, and you really need a good drive out to give you the speed all the way up into turn 3, which is a very long, constant radius corner that ultimately determines your lap time across this fantastic Grand Prix circuit.
And Christian Kronegard in trouble again. I mean, these are great cars, SR8s. I don't think they're going to be that great for rallycross after Christian Kronegard's prototype experiment this afternoon. Hopefully he doesn't dig himself in, though, and unfortunately it's at turn 4 once more. It just suggests he's gone the wrong direction with brake bias in the setup.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So I think Toys, meanwhile, has been demoted by Manhal Alos. He's now got Marco Ciancetti just up behind him. And Alos, now he's got a little bit of clear air, will do what he can to get himself up onto turns with James Abbott fairly rapidly. So here's another look at Christian Kronegard's moment. It's quite a strange one. it's as if he just lost all downforce being that close to Ozzy Yusuf. And rattled through the gravel trap. Meanwhile,
finally seeing Cenchetti there able to make a move on Toos, and yeah, he can then make his climb. As we see, yeah, sure enough, the yellow flags are out for the recovery of Kronegar. That's a real shame.
So 11th place then for Cenchetti, as still Jesus Fuster lines up the move this time to the inside of Jaap Bartels. He's not quite close enough, and James Abbott was thinking, ooh, might be a bit of space to the inside at turn 2. Jesus Fuster, though, moves across, covers the racing line, no opportunity. Then looks to the inside at turn 3. Again, no opportunity. And we are about 20% of the way into this race, so 10 minutes down. And it is Bradley Smith who leads from Tristan Vilas. James Littlejohn is the driver who's just set the fastest lap of the race. In 4th place is Alex Capadia. 5th place is Ross Kaiser. 6th is Alex Mortimer. We've been watching for most of the duration the battle for 7th position, with now Manhals immediately up underneath the rear wing of James Abbott. Marco Cenchetti looking to follow through to make this a 5-car train, as Henk Toys has rather been dropped back from it slightly. So there is the car of Jaap Bartels. You get a sense from that ground level shot just how stiffly sprung the suspension is as well. The driver sitting so near to the surface of the road.
Yeah, and all of these SRM8 models using the same of Radical's sort of patented Nick-Link anti-roll bar system. So yeah, as you say, an extremely sort of stiff car, certainly in the roll centre, and
certainly safe to say that tomorrow morning all of these drivers are going to know about their weekend, because 4 50-minute races in 2 days, essentially it's like doing 2 Grand Prix back to back in terms of actually the amount of time they spent racing.
Yeah, that's right. It's an equivalent. It's effectively the same distance as you would probably do in a typical ELMS or a World Endurance Championship round, but of course you're doing it solo.
As sliding across the AstroTurf there was Jesus Fuster. Shows how hard he's trying. He needs to, as this time it's Alex Capadia who set the fastest lap of the race, as James Abbott again contemplates the move to the inside of Fuster. Fuster still frustrated behind Jaap Bartels. And whoever blinks first in this group, you get a sense he's going to probably lose 3 places, maybe even more, in the blink of an eye. Whoever can show their hand and make a move stick. There's a lot to gain, as Alos has got a good run here on James Abbott through turn 3. Can he force it to the inside at turn 4? He certainly gives a lot of thought to it. Darts to the inside. James Abbott sees him coming, gives him racing room, and he's able to defend his place. That was a nice attempt from Alos. Realised it wasn't going to quite work out. Had to back out of the manoeuvre.
Yeah, I think Abbott was encouraged actually to roll off the brakes a little earlier than he wanted to there, and put the power up to avoid contact with Alos there. He seemed to be quite a fast closing speed, but no, obviously made it stick.
So we return to the battle for 2nd place between Tristan Vilas, James Littlejohn and Alex Capadia. There is Capadia, who's just set the fastest lap. And Bradley Smith has not really romped away from this group of cars. He's only 2 seconds up the road, but he doesn't need to do any more than that, because as long as he finishes within a place or 2 of Tristan Vilas, he will win the championship.
Now, of course, the danger is that at the moment there is about 12 seconds covering the top 6 drivers, which inevitably come in the pit stop. He could come out behind, and that's really going to mess up his race if he gets involved in the traffic and general melee of trying to recover through those places.
I think what Bradley Smith would be thinking is that he's probably a little bit quicker than Tony Wells, probably a little bit quicker than Tom Jordan, the same for Chris Hyman and Terence Woodward. But we saw earlier on the superb drive that Tom Jordan put in. And all it takes is one driver just to put together a stubborn defensive drive, defending into all the right corners, getting the correct corner exit speed. And Bradley Smith is stuck in the way that Vidas was behind Marco Cenchetti.
Yeah, that's right. It could really spoil his afternoon if he finds himself, and Tom Jordan particularly, as you say, he was a real threat here yesterday. And likewise, very, very narrowly missed out on a race win at Monza, when he just conceded really just a yellow flag on the final lap, which gifted Smith the win. So yeah, he's an incredibly fierce racer, and he's done extremely well to graduate up through the Clubman's Cup and SR3 Challenge and into international competition. So
the leading quartet, you could pretty much throw a blanket over them. It's just 4 seconds covering the group at the front of the field. They have now managed to open up a gap of 9 or so seconds to Ross Kaiser and Alex Mortimer. And then the Jaap Bartels battle is 30 seconds away from the pace of the race. So it's going to be between this top 6, as we've got an incident between cars 61 Manhal Alos and number 47 Jeremy Ferguson. Under investigation, I think that was possibly the start of the race, wasn't it, when Alos took evasive action and rejoined into the path of Ferguson.
Yeah, that's correct, and it is looking, the gap between Smith and Vidas there looks noticeably smaller than it has been, and it also looks pretty clear that Capadia and Littlejohn are just waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, the gap comes down to 1 3/4 seconds now between Bradley Smith, Tristan Vidas, and then Littlejohn and Capadia just sitting there and waiting, because particularly for Littlejohn, when he hands over to Tony Wells, Tony is going to emerge 15 seconds clear of the 3 cars surrounding him, because they've not been on the podium this weekend.
Yeah, and with no traffic, you know, there's not as many cars on the circuit, obviously, today, with the SR3s having already concluded their season in the previous race earlier this morning. There's not going to be as much traffic. They're not going to be tripping over each other, and the relative pace of the vehicles being so similar means that it's going to be an easy job or an easier job for Tony to stay abreast of the competition.
Manhalos a drive-through penalty for causing a collision. So he will be ejected from this battle, which has had a substantial change of order, because James Abbott has found a way past both Jesus Fuster and Jaap Bartels. And Jesus thinks it could be done, so he looks to the inside of Bartels as well. Now that Abbott is through, he will try and break away from them, which he should do in fairly short order, I would suspect, because Jaap Bartels really is the cork in the bottle. I think we'll also get a sense now of James Abbott's true pace, and also Marco Ciancetti can race his way through this little group, how quickly he can run. But of course Ciancetti, by virtue of finishing on the podium earlier on, has got himself some additional time in the pits as well to deal with, an extra 5 seconds.
Yeah, the order here is really starting to get exciting, particularly with just 5 minutes before that mandatory pit stop opens.
And that is when the race will get turned on its head, as Ciancetti looks to the inside of Manhal Alos. Alos leaves his turn in very late, left a big, deep, inviting hole for Marco Ciancetti, but Ciancetti realised that wouldn't be the best idea to go for it in case it closed suddenly, because we've still got a long way to go, and he may well have been informed by the team. He'll certainly be informed by the black flag that's waiting at the end of the lap that Manhals is about to serve a drive-through penalty. Meanwhile, Jaap Bartels continuing to absorb all the pressure that's being thrown at him as he makes the slight mistake. Curse the commentator. Jesus Fuster looks to find a hole to the inside of the final turn, but now this is surely advantage Alos coming onto the start and finish straight, because his run was uncompromised. He pulls out of the slipstream of Fuster nice and early. He's not going to be quite close enough to challenge Jaap Bartels. Alos takes his time to seal the manoeuvre, but he does into the opening turn as Fuster runs out wide and loses out to Ciancetti as well.
Yeah, and that's also enabled Henk to get alongside, and if he can keep that drive again, no, he's had to tuck back in again, but yeah, obviously that's given Henk the opportunity to close up behind him as well.
And Jesus Fuster will be so frustrated, because he's been up behind Jaap Bartels throughout the race. He makes the small error, and as we rather thought might happen, he suddenly loses a glut of positions in just a couple of moments. The point at which Manhals elects to come in remains to be seen. Out front, though, Bradley Smith has been caught again by Tristan Vidas. It's only now 2.8 seconds that cover the leading quartet. So this is an intriguing race. And what I'm not clear about is whether or not Bradley has got something in his back pocket and he's just biding his time, or whether or not actually he's got through his tyre allocation for the weekend. He's found the degradation a little bit more extreme than he was expecting. So here's another look at how it all started. Jaap Bartels completely sideways. Jesus Fuster sees a gap. Jaap decides that gap is not going to be there any longer. And then Jesus Fuster makes the mistake into turn 1, loses the places.
Yeah, this is something we haven't really seen too much this year. Generally speaking, we've found that one or another of the drivers has been able to sort of dominate in the early stages and pull a gap which has then been rescinded later in the race. But it's rare that we get an opportunity to see this happen in the early stage of the race, where you've really got a tight bunch of cars going into the pit stops.
It's absolutely fantastic. This is what we're wanting, and really we've got two tight bunches of cars, as now Jaap Bartels has got Manhal Alos closing up onto his tail. The marshals again show Manhal the black flag. Manhal obviously electing not to come in on this occasion, so we've got this queue of 6 cars through the opening sequence, and all credit to Jaap Bartels. He has defended very stoutly not had to do anything overly aggressive. He's just checked his mirrors, parried as appropriate, and therefore there's been no way through for those behind. So they all just run out towards the AstroTurf, the proximity of the circuit. There is Jesus Fuster now. Surely we are just a couple of moments away from the pit window opening, because we're just about 20 minutes into this race. It has been utterly enthralling thus far. Some great wheel-to-wheel dicing for 7th position. We've still got a leading group of cars. No change in their order since the outset of the race, but very tightly matched as well. And it's going to be a case in the second half of the race, Will, of as the gaps open up through the pit stops, how quickly they can be closed down. And actually only then will we get a sense of who's truly got the pace underneath them.
Yeah, that's right. And Capadia so far has set the fastest lap of the race, as we just see the dust being kicked up there by Jeremy Ferguson as the pit window is now open. So all of the cars will need to pass that sign before they can pit. This equalises the teams that have radios that don't and those that don't. But yeah, looking at Capadia's fastest lap time of the race of 1:47.7. The rest of the leading four are all lapping sort of in the 1:49s within a couple of tenths of each other at the moment. So I think it's going to be a big ask for one of these guys to sort of pull something out the bag, particularly, as you say, with tyre allocations at their maximum now, the end of the season. The track is probably at the slipperiest it's been all weekend. So yeah, this is going to be interesting.
And the drivers as well will be properly tired, as Christian Kronegard watches from the pit wall. Unfortunately, his race run a little bit earlier on, so it's going to be at the end of this next lap when we will begin to see people ducking into the pits. And I'd imagine that Jesus Fuster will come in, turned over to Konstantin Kalko, because I can't see he's got anything to gain by staying in this train of cars. And Kalko, if he can get a lap's jump on some of them, might be able to just break clear of this little group.
Yeah, just saw a slightly wayward tail end there from Henk's car, but gathered up pretty well to keep the gap to Jeremy Ferguson.
Just testing the suspension, that wasn't a mistake.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, and another big wide moment there for Manhal.
And a little snatch of the brakes as well for Jesus Fuster.
Yeah, these guys really are on the ragged edge.
Oh, dear me. Jack Bartels, a huge moment coming out of turn 5. The car snapping sideways, and Manhal Alos tries to go past, but Jaap is determined to contest this. And you get a feeling that the second half of this race is going to be a little bit lurid. Tired drivers, worn out tyres, and slight end of term atmosphere. They all want to get the best possible result going into the winter break. As Bartels closes up onto the tail of Manhal, so round he goes, and fortunately they all avoid him. And he got away with it once, got away with it twice. The third time he's been bitten, and he spins out of the scrap for 8th place. Now Manhal, throughout all of this, has got to come in at the end of this lap for his drive-through penalty. I think Jaap was maybe caught out by Manhal having a really slow entry to the corner.
Yeah, it's not a dissimilar incident to that which you saw in the previous race with Rustam, the SR3 driver, and Kronegard, as you say, just caught out by the brake and the entry in there, and a tap and a spin.
Well, Manhal comes into the pits, and that's probably going to be his drive-through penalty.
Meanwhile, we see Jeremy Ferguson and Alan Costa coming in for their stops.
So Alos, well, he's going to be immensely frustrated because it's going to cost him in the region of 20 seconds, that drive-through penalty. And given how evenly matched these Radical SR8s are, that is not an insurmountable deficit to overcome. Meanwhile, none of the leading quartet have come into the pits. They are all heading through the turn 11, turn 12 section of the circuit. There's a big moment again from Jesus Fuster, and it's so unusual, Will, to see these cars sliding around like this.
No, absolutely. Normally the fastest way to drive an SR8 or indeed an SR3 is really let the car do the work. So yeah, minimal steering inputs. If you look towards the apex, the car will go towards it. So yeah, I think it's just a bit of tiredness setting in, and indeed Bradley Smith makes his pit stop now, immediately followed by Tristan. Here's the race in the pit stops.
And of course, Tristan should emerge 10 seconds ahead of Bradley. Meanwhile, James Littlejohn and Alex Capadia continue, and tactically, what they'll be thinking is, can we get a jump with a couple of laps in clear air over Tristan, over Bradley, and give as much of a buffer as possible for the second drivers in those cars as and when they take over. Meantime, Jesus Fuster and James Abbott continue on their way. So we're almost at half race distance. And it's only really going to be after this pit stop sequence when we're going to have a clearer indication as to whom will be leaving the circuit tonight with the Radical European Masters crown in their credit. So here are Littlejohn and Capadia. I suspect that neither of them will start racing with each other now. As long as Littlejohn sets a sufficient pace, Alex Capadia will be content to settle in behind him as Henk Tuis comes in to the pits, as does Jesus Fuster.
Yeah, you can see the Speed Factory team preparing themselves behind Vidas's car should he drop the clutch too quickly. And now a very clean, excellent launch out of the pits, and he's away ahead of Smith.
So Tristan Vidas on his way. They've had to perfect that with the timing loop, and Vidas out of the pits 1 second beyond his allotted time. What about Bradley Smith?
Now, crucially here, Smith has come out just behind Harrison, so this isn't going to help him in his acceleration away and out onto the track. He needs to quickly get out of the way of Harrison and past him and on his way.
Well, it's cost him an additional 3 seconds in the pits. The exit behind Harrison, because he had a momentary delay. So that means, well, we'll find out shortly, that Vidas, I would suggest, it's going to be something in the region of 14, 15 seconds over Bradley Smith, as Smith now makes the move on Harrison towards the end of Sector 1, and it is, in fact, a little bit lower than we thought it might be. It is 11.1 seconds between Vidas and Smith. But where in all of that are Tom Jordan and Tony Wells going to cycle back in after their pit stops? Well, I think Tony Wells is going to emerge out front. For Tristan Vidas, no, he just needs to get his head down and charge. Anything less than a victory is really going to not be enough unless Bradley Smith was to retire from this race.
Yeah, destiny's completely in his own hands now, so he needs to make hay while the sun shines, and yeah, just get really, these next laps need to be the fastest of his weekend.
Almost the most important laps of his career, in fact. You could suggest the former French Formula 4 champion, Tristan Vidas, will he be claiming the Radical European Masters Championship? He's absolutely flying, though. You can just sense from the poise of the car, but so is James Littlejohn, who has just set the fastest middle sector of anybody in the race thus far. So Vidas coming through the conclusion of his outlap. So not really possible to gain any conclusions of his pace, except to say that his middle sector was only 7 tenths away from that of Littlejohn. And Littlejohn on a really hot lap at the moment. And Vidas' advantage over Smith stabilising at 11 seconds. Well, yeah, Bradley Smith is quite happy for that to be the state of affairs. The fastest lap, by the way, has once more gone in favour of Alex Capadia, so that is a point that comes out of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely, that's right. Unless, of course, Littlejohn continues to just find an extra 10th here and a 10th there and can just chip away. But no, so at the moment we've still got Littlejohn. Capadia has not yet come into pit, yes. So Littlejohn, Capadia, Ross Kaiser, Alex Mortar and Chenchetti are all still to pit.
And Chenchetti, with a bit of clear air, has just set his personal best lap of the race as Ross Kaiser is in amongst the traffic. He's just up behind Jeremy Ferguson. As Henk and Alan Costa, their battle is reunited after they've had their pit stops. So we've got 5 cars yet to pit in. Because, of course, with the 2 podiums that we've had for Capadia and Jordan, they're looking at an additional 15 seconds in the pits, which is going to make life pretty difficult for them. I suspect Tom Jordan will probably emerge just ahead of Bradley Smith. So I think by the time this is all worked through, Bradley's probably going to be in 4th place on the road.
Yeah, so Smith just set a last sector 2 of 4 tenths faster than Vidas. So yeah, they're pretty closely matched at the moment. Vidas certainly isn't making the inroads that he needs to.
So Vidas is coming to the conclusion of his first flying lap since his pit stop, and he flashes past us now. 1 minute 49.3 from Tristan Vidas, and that is playing what from Bradley Smith as he comes through. It plays a 1 minute 48.4, so he's 9 tenths a second quicker over the course of the last lap.
Yeah, that's right. And with almost exactly 10 seconds between them. Wow, this is really going to be close as we get towards the checkered flag.
Certainly will be. As well, Bradley Smith doesn't need to pass Vidas, but except to say that Smith would like to finish the season with a victory. As Alain Costa and Toys continue to battle, and Smith now sets the fastest first sector of anybody. And you just get a feeling that first phase of the race, he was just keeping something a little bit in reserve, because now he really would appear to have pulled the pin and is well on his way.
And these are all the hallmarks of a really good endurance race. And obviously, the SR8 is fantastic preparation for international GT and sports car racing if you're an aspiring driver. And he's just done that. He's kept his tinder dry and obviously preserved the tyres through the opening phase of the race. And now he can really attack.
Yeah, so Bradley was only 9.4 seconds back from Tristan at the end of the lap. He is 9.2 seconds back. So again, 0.3 quicker than Vidas through sector 2. As the pit window is closed, so we'll be expecting to see the 4 cars that haven't come in yet, Littlejohn, Pardia, Kaiser and Mortimer, in at the end of this lap. So it'll be at the end of the lap after that that we'll truly be able to understand how this is likely to play out in the concluding 15 minutes or so. It will be then, as we've got a drive-through penalty for Jaap Bartels for speeding in the pit lane as Vidas comes through. Another 1 minute 49, a 1 minute 49.3. Bradley Smith, a 1 minute 48.4, again 0.9 of a second in favour of Smith, and so that's going to bring the gap down to just under 8 seconds. So Bradley is determined to finish the season on the high, but I think also what's probably inspiring this charge as we've got into the pit lane, Littlejohn and Kapadia, is in particular, I think, the desire to try and jump Tom Jordan in the pits.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously from the podium finish that they had earlier today, then Kapadia and Tom are carrying a 60-second, an extra 15 seconds of success seconds in their pit stop. Quite a nice change there, obviously. Jordan just being helped out by Kapadia in the driver change.
So Littlejohn will hand over to Tony Wells, Alex Kapadia to Tom Jordan. Tristan Vidas and Bradley Smith, of course, going the full duration single-handedly. Just easing on through the throttle is Tristan Vidas. And so he is racing cars he currently can't see. He's arriving into turn 10 now. The car just squirming on the brakes as static in the pit lane. The cars are Tony Wells and Tom Jordan. Will they emerge in front of Tristan Vidas? That is the question that we are all asking.
So Littlejohn's already on his way and on his way towards the pit exit, so he should be safe. But where exactly will Tom Jordan come out?
Yeah, so Tony Wells is going to take the lead of the race. Substantially so, in fact. And after they lost time earlier on in the first race, that probably cost them a podium through the pit stops. That's been an absolutely excellent pit stop for Tony Wells and James Littlejohn. And in fact, they were still 5 seconds adrift of where they perhaps could have been. That pit stop. Kapadia, Tom Jordan has come out behind Tristan Vidas. And then we have got Bradley Smith in 4th position. So Abacus at the ready at the moment. We're looking at 15 points in the direction of Tristan Vidas and 8 points in the direction of Bradley Smith. So that is still enough to give Bradley the championship. But where it starts to become very interesting is if Tristan Vidas was to pass Tony Wells, but Bradley Smith was unable to get ahead of Tom Jordan.
Yeah, that's right. And then we'd be looking at...
we'd be looking at a countback situation.
Yeah, that's right. They'd be tied on points, and I think in that case, then it would be awarded to Vidas because he would have 2 more race wins than Bradley Smith.
So the first lap of the race was set by Quadra, 1 minute 47.7, and well, is it worth posing the question, if you were the Mech Tech team on the radio to Bradley Smith or via the pit board, would you be telling him actually go for the fastest lap here? Except what we haven't have we counted the pole point into this equation? Is that there as well?
So it's 13 points.
So it's 13
covering
points.
The gap between Bradley Smith and
so
Tristan
in that
Vidas.
case, Bradley can hold station in 4th, with
but
impunity unless Vidas sets the fastest lap and wins the race.
Yes, and incredibly, Jordan's actually just set the fastest lap. Oh, that's
just
the changeover.
Yeah, so here is our race leader, Tony Wells. His advantage over Tristan Vidas is 7 seconds as Jaap Bartels emerges a lap down from his drive-through penalty for pit lane speeding. And then Tom Jordan, I think, is about to be passed by Bradley Smith, judging by our timing screen. And this has happened a couple of times for Tom this year, is that sometimes he just really struggles on the outlap, and it would appear as if he is about to be swamped by Smith. And again, that really decides things in Smith's favour, provided he is able to get it through to the flag. So here is our race leader, Tony Wells, and Vidas already half a second quicker than Wells through the first sector of the lap. But Tony, if he can stabilise at a decent pace here, with the time remaining, might just be able to hold on. It's going to be touch and go in the fight for third in the standings. I think that's more likely than not going to swing towards Tom Jordan and Scapardia. Chris Hyman is some 10 seconds back from Tom. And Bradley Smith has indeed passed Tom Jordan on this lap. So that intermediate split on the timing screen would suggest that Smith is through to third.
Yeah, and he's doing exactly what he needs to do to get ever closer to that big shiny pot at the end of the road.
So through the middle section of the lap for Tony Wells, and then down through turn 12. And again, he is giving away time hand over fist to Tristan Vidas. In fact, Tony Wells, it is not unlikely that he's going to slip to third between now and the checkered flag. As across the line he comes, gives us a 1 minute 52.8. By way of comparison, it's a 1 minute 50.0 from Tristan Vidas. He's just 4.2 seconds back. And at the very back of your pitch, you can see Bradley Smith homing into view, and Bradley just 11.7 seconds away from the lead of the race as well. And he is a second quicker than Vidas, and he is 3 seconds quicker than Wells.
Yeah, so Vidas just has to negotiate his way past Jaap there, who of course is a lap down, having now served that penalty infringement.
Right, we've got a stop and go penalty for car 5, Constantine Calco, and car 20, Alan Costa, for pit infringements. I think Brian Poulter's just lonely. He wants the company down in the pit lane.
Yeah, as we saw last night, there's anything could happen in the closing stages of the race, and yeah, we had a couple of surprises and a couple of retirees indeed at the end of the race yesterday. So it's still far from over.
Still far from over, as Vidas inexorably closing in onto the tail of Tony Wells, and really like to see Tony being able to put up a bit of a stout defence here to Tristan Vidas. For Vidas, if he was to win this race, it's going to have been a really bittersweet weekend, because he'll have been the driver with the most victories this season. He'll have won 3 of the 4 races this weekend, but still not come away with the title.
Yeah, that's right. He really set the blistering pace at the start of the season, having made his debut in an SR3 12 months ago here at Barcelona. But yeah, he was undoubtedly the class of the field this year, certainly at the start of the year. And has impressed with some incredibly quick qualifying times. But as Bradley's developed and got used to his SR8 and the setup of that car, he's just got faster and faster and faster, and been able to squeeze the pressure on. And obviously that's culminated in a fantastic finale here at Barcelona.
So Vidas in pursuit of Tony Wells. Across the line they come. This concludes the 20th lap of the race. We have got just 3 seconds between the 2 leaders. And Bradley now within 10 seconds of the lead, just 9.2 seconds back. And, well, wouldn't he like to finish the season on the winning note? Tom Jordan, without company, a little bit inconsistent at the last lap, a 1 minute 53.1, but that's matching the pace of Terence Woodward and Chris Hyman behind him, and therefore there's no need for Tom to push on any quicker than that if he doesn't feel comfortable in so doing. So here's the 3rd place car, Bradley Smith, and if the checkered flag were to be shown now, he would be the champion. Quite remarkable the way that his career has just kicked on and developed through the Radical Racing ladder, because he has taken it with a rung at a time, but just a year at a time at each rung. Very impressive stuff from Bradley.
Yes, and of course run by the family-run Mech Tech racing team as well. So a very established karting racing team, but only really they joined Radical Racing as a newcomers to car and car motorsport. So started out in the Clubman's Cup SR3, then into the SR3 Challenge, and now here they are with the SR8 in Europe, and mix it with some large and very, very established Radical teams.
And also, what's good to see as well is that they've established such a foothold. They're actually expanding into other formulas, such as the Cure drivers beating a path to their door. So they're off to race in the BRDC Formula 4 Championship Winter Series, I understand, next weekend.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And Bradley, of course, some other experience on the international stage, having won last year's Sunoco Daytona Prize and an opportunity to drive in the Daytona 24 Hours in January last year in a Daytona prototype. And indeed, that's gone to another Radical winner this year in the shape of Phil Keane, who's competing this weekend in the GT Open. But no, we wish Phil the very best of luck, and I'm sure he'll do extremely well at the Rolex 24 in January.
For absolute clarity, we should say that Bradley Smith is not the same Bradley Smith as the MotoGP racer. Although I can imagine that is going to become quite a confusion as Bradley...
and indeed both have driven Radicals in the past. We had 2 years ago, Bradley Smith, the MotoGP rider, did indeed sample an SR3 in Spain, here in Spain.
Well, that's just making it confusing for everybody, isn't it? If you do something like that. As Bradley Smith, the four-wheeled racer, finds a way past Bartels. Meanwhile, we return to the fight at the front of the field because Tony Wells has been reeled in by Tristan Vidas. The pair of them separated by just over a car length. And Vidas last time around was 2.3 seconds faster. And he's got plenty of time to play with, Vidas, because he's reeled in Wells in about 6 minutes. And now Tony will have to try and defend for 10 minutes or so. And that feels like it's going to be a tall order, such as the differential in pace between the pair of them. As flying off in the background, that's Jean Gandar, who veers back onto the road. It makes the lap pretty much easier for Bradley Smith as Vidas to the inside of Wells and takes the lead of the race. So Tony Wells drops to second position. But I think he and James Littlejohn are set fair for a podium because they're not being caught at all by Tom Jordan in fourth place. So down through turn 12, Tristan Vidas, well, he's out front, he's got the lead. Whether or not he will be caught by Bradley Smith. Chin down the checker flag. Here's another look at Jean Gandar's way of a moment, and just feels like he overcorrected the car mid-corner because of some understeer, and suddenly the aero kicked in and fired him off in a different direction to the one in which he really wanted to go. So 8.25 minutes remain here in Barcelona, the championship decider in the Radical European Masters. It's Tristan Vidas who leads. Second place, Tony Wells. Third is Bradley Smith. But I'll tell you what, Will, Vidas, and I've been noticing this the past couple of laps, really does seem to be struggling with understeer.
Yeah, that's right. And so as it stands on the road at the moment, Smith will win the championship by just 4 points. But no, that car doesn't seem to be entirely in tandem with his movements, as looks like Calco coming into service, stop go. Yeah,
comes to a halt.
Excellent. Very good. Lays a big set of 11s there on the exit from the pit stop box. But
I've always thought when you're coming in for a drive-through penalty, you want to be at the mercy of the clerk of the course. Leaving big black tyre marks as you get on your way just means they're going to have the radar gun.
I don't think it ingratiates you with race control. But,
it really doesn't.
Yeah, getting back to the fight at the front. Vidas is just slightly, but again, of course, we're right at the end of the weekend here. The track is no doubt at its slipperiest, and the tyres are going to be they're going to be right on the limit. Everybody's absolutely pushing and getting every last out of this out of each tyre. So he's that's certainly not his natural lines, and he doesn't look completely comfortable.
He doesn't. It's just been through turn 10 and also turn 1 last time around. He just seemed to be a little bit shy of the apex, and that will be causing him a little bit of concern, a little bit of frustration. But for the time being, it's not really dissuading his pace unduly. That's a much better lap, a 1 minute 49.5. A 1 minute 49.3 from Bradley Smith, so he closes in, but not by nearly as much as he would have liked. But that's why, because Bradley was up behind Tony Wells, and he's about to go through into second position. He does just that.
Now, the question is, what sort of fireworks are we going to have if Smith can close up to the back of Vidas? You could almost argue that Vidas is in a better place as the hunter rather than as the hunted. If you can pressure Bradley into a mistake, chasing him, then maybe you would have a better shot at the title.
I would imagine that Bradley will run at a pace he's comfortable with. If it results in him catching Tristan Vidas, so be it. I don't think he's going to go out of his way to chase down Vidas and take any unnecessary risks, because with 6 minutes to go in the season, it's going to be an awfully long walk home. The team will cancel his air ticket if he parks the car in the tyre wall.
Yeah, it's a long way to Billericay on your own.
Feels like a long way to Billericay from anywhere, to be honest. As there is Bradley Smith, just has a glance across, finds the exit point in the corner, and away he goes. Got a little bit of traffic in the form of Alain Costa to contend with. And Bradley can't help himself. He's already a second quicker than Tristan Vidas through the first 2 sets on this lap alone.
Yeah, he wants the full set, doesn't he? I don't. Yeah, he might even be pushing for the fastest lap as well. But no, this is going to be a very, very thrilling final 5 minutes.
First of all, it's Alain Costa, and the last thing he wants to do is get caught up with a back marker. But I suspect that Alain will have received appropriate notification, either through flags from the marshals, and in fact he just moves smartly aside. So Bradley continues to chase down Vidas. The gap is down to 2.9 seconds. So 1 minute 49.9 from Vidas, 1 minute 49.2 from Bradley Smith. But don't forget, even through the traffic at the concluding sector of the lap, Bradley Smith still setting the same sector time as Tristan Vidas. In third place, it's Tony Wells. Fourth is Tom Jordan. Fifth is Terence Woodward. Sixth is Chris Hyman. And Hyman and Woodward are engaged, according to our timing screen, in quite a nice little scrap for fifth and sixth position. But both of them are a good 10 seconds away from Tom Jordan. So the top 4 places unlikely to change, as Vidas is still pushing very hard. And for whatever reason, this second half of the race, it doesn't look like it's coming comfortably for Tristan Vidas. You really get the sense that he's having against his own volition, really, to hustle the car a little bit more than he'd like.
Yeah, that's right. So, and obviously, if he's doing that all the while and concentrating on what the car's doing, he's not going to be aware of what's been going on behind him. And ultimately, now with Smith in second place, his outcome's almost academic, really.
So we have got the gap between the leaders coming down fractionally again still. We're about to embark on the penultimate lap of the race as Vidas flings it sideways again. Really is asking some big demands of his rear spoiler. It's nice to see these cars moving around the racing line. I'd imagine from a hot day and plenty of big sports cars, it's probably somewhat slick, and there's lots and lots of marbles offline, so you don't really want to get off the racing line, because that's going to make life difficult. But the racing line itself is probably a little bit more slippery than you'd like. So over the line now comes Vidas, a 1 minute 49.7. He elevates his pace, but so does Bradley Smith to a 1 minute 48.8. So the gap is down to within 2 seconds. There are 2 laps to go in the Radical European Masters season. And Vidas again, the car moving on the brakes on the way into turn 1. Through turn 3, and yeah, feels like he's caught in no man's land, and the car's understeering all the way into the corner. Then suddenly the aero's biting just before he hits the apex, and that's just kicking the tail out. And something's gone, and that is a very strange moment. It's the front left suspension just buckled on the car and pitched Vidas into a high-speed spin into the gravel trap, and I've never seen that before on a Radical car. The most unusual incident. And we thought he was putting straight on the car and it wasn't quite handling, and then suddenly the championship is completely in the direction of Bradley Smith. He can now stop, park, have a chat to the marshals, because he has got enough to claim title. Here we see it again. Well, that is most unusual.
Yeah, that's it initially looked like possibly a tyre issue, but no, it looks like he's had a suspension problem there, and yeah, nothing he could do about that. Oh, desperate attempt to try and keep the car in a straight line. But
yeah, or the wheel mounting or something. It was just, it was just bizarre, because you wonder if something had just been loosening itself for several laps before then. The way the car's handling was looking more and more lurid.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But yeah, back to the front of the field here, and just one more corner to go for Bradley Smith.
until he goes into his last lap. And then it is
Indeed, I was getting ahead of myself there.
So across the line he comes. We're into the last lap now, and for Bradley Smith, well, it's not the circumstances in which he'd have wanted to win the championship, in that I think he would have far rather passed Tristan Vidas on the road. As it is, he is going to have utterly dominated today. Do have to point out the imperfection that he's not set fastest lap in this race.
No, and I you know, as you say, yeah, absolutely must be pointed out that Tristan has been pretty much his equal for the entire season and has driven exceptionally throughout the year. You know, fantastic racecraft and a fantastic pace in his debut Radical year. So yeah, hats off to Tristan, and I'm sure he's going to have a very bright future, hopefully in Radical or whatever he does moving forward. But no, undoubtedly this is the man of the moment. Bradley Smith looking to make it, yeah, three championships in a row and 3 for Radical.
Well, if these two return to the Radical European Masters next year, we are in for an absolutely magnificent season. Don't forget to keep your eyes on the Radical Sports Cars website throughout the course of the winter, because there will be plenty of exciting announcements around the new models that were unveiled this weekend in Barcelona. There will also be driver announcements. The calendar for next season will be announced in the next couple of weeks as well, so I'm told. So make sure you stay in touch. Also, we've referred a lot to the epic 2012 Radical Club. I believe the footage of those races is still to be found on Radical TV, so do treat yourself to a watch of that over the winter months. For now, though, we can applaud Bradley Smith. It is a fantastic performance from Bradley. He a name to watch for the future of international motorsport, because in 3 years he has won the Radical Clubman's Cup, the Radical SR3 Challenge. He is now the champion European Masters. Bradley Smith takes the win and salutes the pit wall. A fantastic weekend from Bradley Smith. He wins the race and the title. Second place will go the way of Tony Wells and James Littlejohn, and then completing the rostrum it should be Tom Jordan, Alex Capadia, but fourth place is far from settled. Terence Woodward, Chris Hyman and James Abbott are as one. Yeah,
just a couple more laps, and Kaiser just defending his line tightly there, and I think he'll have enough drive now, Woodward rather, to to hold on to position, and it's one last flourish all the way to the line, keep your power in, and yes, sure enough, Woodward takes it.
So third was confirmed for Tom Jordan, Alex Capadia, fourth Terence Woodward and Ross Kaiser, fifth Chris Hyman, Alex Mortimer, sixth James Abbott, and then into seventh place Jeremy Ferguson, eighth for Constantine Calco. It's going to be ninth for Marco Cianchetti, and then completing the top 10, provided nothing goes wrong on this final lap, will be Henk Toys. So an excellent quartet of races this weekend for the Radical European Masters. They always seem to throw up the entertainment here in Barcelona. And once more, Will, it was drama in the penultimate lap of the race, which ultimately decided the fate of the championship.
Yeah, as so many times before we've seen going into the final round, there is 0 or single-digit figures separating the leading pack, and yeah, once again we've been treated to a fantastic textbook, close, fair between these identical specification cars, and yeah, it's been a fantastic end to a fantastic season.
So let's have a look then at the final classification. Bradley Smith wins. Tony Wells and James Littlejohn 15 seconds back then. And Alex Capadia, Terence Woodward and Ross Kaiser in fourth from Chris Hyman and Alex Mortimer. James Abbott in sixth, Jeremy Ferguson seventh, Jesus Fuster and Constantine Calco in eighth. Then Marco Cianchetti, Henk Toys, Manhal Alos, Alain Costa, Jaap Bartels and Jean Gandar all had one or two adventures along the way. So Bradley, 2 victories this weekend. Tony Wells and James Littlejohn, a richly deserved podium, will be classified 15th. John Harrison had a race of all sorts of problems, as did Ozzy Youssef and Gavin Kershaw. And we lost Christian Cronegard a long time ago. So the cars will very shortly be arriving into Parc Fermé for the final of the season. And then it will be to celebrate as Smith acknowledges the applause and acclaim of the crowd en route to the pit entrance. And well, it's been a super season of racing. It feels like a very, very long time since we kicked it all off. It's been a pleasure to spend the year talking with you, Will, and look forward to doing the same again in 2015. For now, though, Bradley Smith into Parc Ferme and glides to a halt. The MECTEC team already in position to salute their man. As Smith stands and acknowledges the applause. Runners-up, Tony Wells and James Littlejohn. Well, after the disappointments they had yesterday, to bounce back and finish second. A great performance. The same, Tom Jordan and Scapadia. They have netted 3 podiums from the weekend.
Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant.
So high emotion on the podium. A little bit of a debrief for Littlejohn and Wells.
Bit of luck finally came our way. Bit of luck finally came our way with
Tony should be properly delighted with that. I think he is, grinning from ear to ear.
Well done, top drive. Brilliant.
Handshake from Bradley Smith. He will be properly pleased because he did. Admittedly, Tristan Vidas had that problem late on, but nonetheless, he's done exactly what he needs to do all weekend. He knew that yesterday in the 2 races, because of the extent of his pit handicap time, he was unlikely to win the race. He converted, though, this morning when he had a reduced pit handicap compared to Tristan Vidas this afternoon. He was harrying Vidas late on. Eventually, there were problems for Vidas. So let's take a look back at the highlights of the race then. And from the outside, it was Smith who led the pack down towards the first corner. Vidas is slotted into second, and then Littlejohn and Kaiser. As behind Manhalas and Jeremy Ferguson, and a little bit of a coming together. Halos, though, looked to recover well, so he moved past Ozzy Yusuf in the early stages. The other driver who was upwardly mobile, of course, was Alex Capadia, as we had some super scraps beginning to form up a little lower down the order. Mistake from Yusuf, promoted Jeremy Ferguson and Alain Costa. Christian Cronegard's day came to a fairly abrupt halt in the turn 4 gravel trap. Cronegard struggling with the balance of the car all weekend. It was a super fight for 7th behind Jaap Bartels. Eventually, it was James Abbott who was the first driver to breach the dam. Thereafter, Jaap was under all sorts of sustained pressure from Jesus Fuster, amongst others. And Halos was then able to carve his way through that group as Fuster made the mistake and was passed also by Cincetti. Well, post-pit stops, Vidas emerged behind Tony Wells, but he was able to ease past Wells fairly rapidly and then broke clear out front. Manhalas had another drama to the inside of Toyce. But then, the penultimate lap, failure with the geometry of the front left of Vidas's car, pitching him into a spin and into retirement. That promoted Bradley Smith back into the lead of the race, and he came through to score his 2nd victory of the weekend and, more importantly, claim the Radical European Masters title for 2014. So a very proud Phil Abbott, the co-founder and technical director of Radical Sports Cars, as the drivers momentarily about to be announced onto the final rostrum of the season. Opportunity for Tony Wells just to grab a little bit of a drink of water, because even though the light has begun to fade a little bit, it's still pretty hot here at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Drivers, plenty to discuss after another enjoyable race. Plenty of twists and turns, as we rather suspected would be the case. Opportunity just to have a little bit of a look at the timing screens. Alex Capadia again setting the fastest lap of the race. I think that's the 3rd time he's managed to achieve that distinction over the course of the weekend. There is the MECTEC P1, the 2014 pit board. The drivers about to come out onto the rostrum. So first of all, into 3rd position, I think that is the Sunoco driver of the weekend presentation. So I think that's John Harrison who has garnered that distinction. So we'll then move on to the top three in the race overall. So Tom Jordan and Alex Kapadia, race winners. Runners-up, Tony Wells and James Littlejohn. And then our winner of the final race of the year and our Radical European Masters champion, Bradley Smith. Eventually makes his way onto the rostrum, receives the applause from the pit wall. Moment to celebrate, so he pauses for the national anthem. So on to the presentation of the trophies. And so into third place. It's been a very successful weekend for Jordan and Kapadia. Runners-up, Wells and Littlejohn. They had disappointments yesterday, particularly during the second race when Littlejohn was very neatly positioned. And then our race winner and champion, Bradley Smith, once more on the top step of the podium. So as Bradley Smith celebrates becoming the 2014 Radical European Masters champion, the champagne is unleashed on the rostrum, which means it's time for myself, Ben Evans, to say thank you for your company this season. We'll look forward to seeing you in 2015.